right, looks like we are good to go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force. I will call this meeting to order. And first item on is to elect a chair and a vice chair for the meeting, or for the task force, sorry. So I'm looking for nominations for the chair.
Madam Clerk, it's Brian. I'm happy to nominate Buck Hicks as chair.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that nomination?
I'll second the
Councillor
nomination.
Millen? Thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair? Any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations then? Councillor Millen, Councillor Desai, thank you. Councillor Hicks, are you willing to stand for chair of the task force?
No, thank you. I'm teasing.
Don't do that.
No, it'd be my pleasure.
Thank you very much. All right, so Councillor Hicks is the chair of the task force. We will now open nominations for vice chair of the task force.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. O'Leary.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Millen. Do I have a seconder for that? Warden McQueen? Lots of seconders. Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations? Can I have a mover to close nominations, please? Councillor Desai, a seconder. Councillor Hicks?
Yes.
Councillor O'Leary, will you stand as vice chair?
Happy to accept.
Thank you very much. That is it for my part. Councillor Hicks, I will turn the chair over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I see nods. Okay, good.
It's just the sunshine a little bright.
Yeah, I know. I'm sitting in the car and I have the sun coming in from the front here. I could change the orientation of the car. That might take care of it. Anyways, moving on to item number 3. Is there any declaration of pecuniary or declaration of interest? Seeing none, we will proceed to item number 4. We're going to discuss the task force mandate, committee role, goals and objectives. And you all have the document before you, right? So who would like to start this discussion?
If it's helpful to the committee, I can just, for the record, review the document that went before council back in July with regard to the terms of reference. So the mission and purpose of this task force is to analyze economic and social conditions in Hanover and the city of Owen Sound and their impact on Grey County as a whole, and to make recommendations for enhancements or improvements to these conditions. Specifically, the objectives are to assess available social and economic data for the town of Hanover and the city of Owen Sound, including any trend analysis and forecasting, and to develop a report which will contain recommendations and a work plan for council's consideration to address these opportunities and areas of concern for the benefit of both the 2 municipalities and the county as a whole. You will all be aware that Hanover and Owen Sound are the only 2 wholly designated primary settlement areas in Grey County, and they both have some unique circumstances that council felt required some attention in order to ensure the overall health of the county and that the goals of our official plan are met. So maybe at this point, Randy, can I ask you to make some comments in that regard with regarding the goals of the official plan and how that plays into this task force's work?
Yeah, I think with respect to the official plan, I think we identify through policy that settlement areas are areas where we focus majority of our growth in Grey County. And as Kim noted, Hanover and Owen Sound being 2 of our key primary settlement areas that are solely designated as settlement areas, it's critical that they can continue to grow and thrive. And so that's something that I think is based in our official plan policies There's obviously other settlement areas throughout Grey County, but I think the Hanover and Owen Sound act as two regional centers and draw from a large population in terms of some of the services and facilities that are obviously in those two municipalities that people rely on. So that's from the official plan policy perspective, I think that's one of the critical aspects of making sure that our settlement areas are able to grow and thrive, and where a majority of our growth and development are focused.
And if I can just build on Randy's comments, we are aware as well, I think, that both Hanover and Owen Sound play an important role from a social services perspective, that many of those services are concentrated in these two communities. So, Hanover and Owen Sound are really playing a strong supporting role to the rest of the county by concentrating those services and providing those to the people that are most in need.
Councillors, any comments?
Mr. Chair, I could probably pop in here and tell my story. I think over the past 7-8 weeks now, we've been dealing with a drug house in Owen Sound. It's and I bring this up because I think I remember Buck saying it at one point. Some of the social issues that we go through is starting to, like, it affects our police and it affects our funding. So over the past 8 weeks, we've had this problem in a beautiful area in downtown Owen Sound that is, it really is a nice street, but these drug houses can pop up anywhere. And it's grown to the point where these people are scared to go to bed at night. There's people running through their backyards. There's people on their front porch during the night. We've had, we did a 2-week blitz with the police where we've had a police vehicle sit in front of this drug house from 11 at night till 6 in the morning, to the point where the police could no longer staff that, with holidays and a couple of people off sick and that sort of thing. They haven't been able to do it. These residents, I've personally gone down there and sat on the front porch of an elderly lady on 3 different occasions for 2 hours at a time to try and talk to these people and in an effort to try and make them feel safe. It's impossible. They can't go to bed at night unless they see some kind of security at the foot of their front porch. And some people have even gone as far as putting a cowbell on their door so that if somebody does come in, it's going to wake them so that at least they know when they're coming in. So we had an emergency meeting with the police last Friday, and the police can't do what we need to have done. So the city has now hired security to sit, a security vehicle to sit in front of this house from 11 at night till 6 in the morning, whenever a police car is not available. We've had a meeting with police, the entire neighborhood, 4 or 5 counselors, and just in an effort to discuss these things, we've had mental health come and victim services and try and speak to these people. But it's just it's a perfect problem for this committee to discuss, because mental health is of no help. They will not be a first responder. They will not go to this place without the presence of police. And this is only one place in one city that is in big trouble. And there's literally nothing that we can do. We've had bylaw go, like this place has had, they're letting off firecrackers inside the house. There's gas tanks in the front hall. There's 5 apartments in the building. And to compound the problem, this house sits at the bottom of a paved catwalk where I would say probably 30 to 40 children will be walking past to go up that catwalk to Hillcrest School. And now the neighbors are calling for a police presence to be standing on that corner every morning from 8 to 9 and 3 to 4 in the afternoon to protect these children. So some of the things that you see around this house it would traumatize children. And so we don't have the capacity to handle something like this. And it's kind of disappointing. You know, we just heard Premier Ford adding 200 police officers to the OPP and absolutely nothing for city police service like ours. So that's my story. It's not a good one, but something that I wanted to share just to give you an idea of what we're going through. That's only one situation. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor O'Leary. And just prior to jumping into the weeds, and it's important that we have those stories, but I wonder if we could look back on the report that Kim created, talked about analyzing economic and social conditions under several lenses. And I wonder if people might comment about, is there anything missing from that list? Because in the list of lenses was labor force and social issues, supports, transportation, housing. Does anyone have any comments about whether that's a complete list, or do you see anything missing from that list? Is there any lens that you think is important that we examine that isn't there? I had thought about, I see you, Warden McQueen. I had thought about policing, but I see further in the report, it did talk about policing in the terms of reference. And I wondered as well about the word growth. But then I saw that growth appears to be addressed through words like trend analysis and forecasting. Is that sufficient, do you think, CAO?
I do think that that was the intent there to understand what things were looking like in the future. There are, you know, when we talk about housing availability, well, that could also be extended to speak to commercial space as well, talking about things like the absorption rate, the vacancy rate, and information like that.
Okay, Warden McQueen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, you mentioned transportation, and that's something that I think is a very important topic. But I'm looking at the terms of reference, but that was in a different list. I'm trying to find where you were talking all those points.
So when I looked at,
no, I see it. I see it. Yep. Because I see it now. No, that's good. And yes, and I'm sure through all those points, it may be broadened as we get into the conversations as well. How that sort of ties, how they all tie together, and how we expand on them as well. And I think that's a pretty good list. I mean, going back to Councillor O'Leary with regards to mental health and addictions and poverty, it's listed there. So yeah, I think we got our work cut out for us, but we're ready for the task.
So I'm looking for people. I don't see anyone with their hand up, but I'm thinking about the agenda for this task force. We have 8 months. I had some thoughts about how we might want to structure our meetings. Perhaps my suggestion would be having meetings in accordance with themes. So for example, we could have a meeting where the theme of the meeting will be policing. Another one might be around labor projections and employment. And then there could be another one around sort of the human and social service challenges. I think all of them attempting to extract existing data. I don't think we need to spend a lot of money on getting new information. The information exists. So for example, if we had a meeting at which we invited the 2 police chiefs, I know that I'm on the police services board for Hanover, and we just completed our annual report. And some of the data in that report, I think will be very, very helpful in terms of painting the picture for Hanover in the context of Grey County and in the context of the province. And by the way, in our report, there were some stats as well about Owen Sound, because that's one of the municipalities that we examined and compare to. But I thought if we had a meeting where the focus would be, for example, policing, then we could invite the two police chiefs. We could give them a heads up that we're looking for some data that helps us to paint the picture about the challenges that they face from a policing perspective. Your thoughts on that, sort of having these themes?
So, Mr. Chair, I do see Councillor Desai's hand up.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. I'll start with the idea of having themed meetings. I think that's a great idea. It sort of maps out what we will be talking about over the course of this task force. So we do have to remember that the task force is bound by a time limit on its duration. So I think that's a great idea. The other thing I wanted to sort of touch upon is in terms of the lens, if maybe we should be looking at this even from a climate change lens, especially when it comes to the economic themes that we will be looking at, if we should be considering climate change lens. I know it's been quite a fairly large part of what we've been trying to do at Grey County. So just sort of throwing that question out there, if there would be an appropriate time where our discussions would sort of be looked at from a climate change lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. I guess my comment would be that I would view the climate change lens in the similar manner as I would view sort of the housing lens. We have a task force or a committee that's focusing on climate change, and I think that data can flow into the work that we're doing here. Similarly, we have a task force that's focusing on affordable and attainable housing, which I think can nicely flow into the work that we're doing here as well. So I certainly see that as a threaded, or what do you call it when you stitch things, that theme throughout the entire work that we do. I think that's appropriate.
I believe the word you were looking for is woven.
Woven, okay. Woven. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions. Warden McQueen, O'Leary, and Millen.
McQueen, O'Leary, and Millen.
So thank you,
Okay,
Madam. Thank you, Madam Clerk, and to you, Mr. Chair. Something I feel that is somewhere along this process is maybe we attend Owen Sound and do a site visit, and we also attend Owen Sound. Just something to think about. I hear the passion or the feeling of Councillor O'Leary, and sometimes two-dimensional. If there's things that I think we should leave that option open at a certain time through this process, and I know it would probably help me understand a little bit maybe of the larger urban areas from those that represent that area, if need be, if there's things that need to be shown. And I just think we just leave that option open that at some time, if we, maybe, had a meeting, maybe it was at the Hanover Council with our committee, and then we toured afterwards, and maybe we had a tour in Owen Sound, if need be, after a county council or after a committee meeting, when we get back into maybe getting together. I just think it's something that, it's sort of the ability to have that three-dimensional versus the two-dimensional as we are talking about things, but there may be things like, as Councillor Leary is talking about this particular property, and just to get a bit more perspective of what that really looks like, and sort of, have a little bit more understanding. And I'm just leaving it up as an option at this time, but just something to think about.
That's a good idea, Warden McQueen. Councillor O'Leary?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too, that is a good idea, because I'd love for all of you to see this street that I'm talking about and see how beautiful the street is.
Oops, we're losing you.
Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, I lost you for a bit there, Councillor O'Leary. I don't know if others did as well.
Surely we don't have internet problems in Owen Sound. Like, I'm not. Anyway, I would love to see everyone come and walk down this street to see how beautiful a street it is. I mean, this can happen in any community. It's certainly not a poor street or a poor area by any means, and I think that'd be good for everyone to see. exactly where this is and be able to see like where the school is and where the children are going to walk past. And I just wanted to mention that, Mr. Chair, you had mentioned the police. Definitely we should have at least a meeting, only talking about police and some of the problems they have. And we have to look deeper into it and what they're dealing with. Like they're recycling people, charging people, putting them in jail, and within 24 hours they're right back in this house. It's everything is out of their hands. And you hear the odd story where a judge takes a person and says, "Listen, I'm going to give you a choice. You're going to jail for a year, or you're going to take rehab for 6 months. You make the choice." And that sort of thing has been successful. But I mean, these people, they're humans too, but they're sick and they need help. And so it's further to what the police are doing. It's almost like their hands are tied. And for us as a city, don't forget our emergency services budget is already 47% of our overall budget. And we have a police chief that's he needs more help. And how are we going to sell that to our taxpayers when we're almost we're approaching 50% of our budget? Those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You talked about the lenses we might look through to guide us on our deliberations, and one that occurs to me, and it's maybe applicable to a lot of the topics that we've talked about, is the different expectations of people that perhaps have been in the community, maybe even raised in the community, but have certainly have been here a good number of years, and the influx of new people who, for a large degree, go to the larger urban centers, Hanover and Owen Sound particularly. The difference in expectations of the two groups, I guess I'll call them. Some of the people that have been in our communities for a lot of years don't expect a walk-in clinic. I mean, they certainly love it as an example, but they don't really expect a walk-in clinic. Whereas someone that's moved here from a large urban center, the GTA primarily, they expect that type of infrastructure to be in place. And I'm wondering if that's causing some of the friction in our communities, is the disparity of the expectations of those two groups. And I don't know whether that's a lens we want to be aware of in our deliberations. But I think that does drive some of the challenges in our communities.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? So given the silence, Kim, I'm wondering, in terms of, I look at the breadth of activity we plan to get into, and that timeline of 8 months. My thought is a monthly meeting isn't going to cut it for this task force. At least maybe in the beginning, we should be meeting a little more frequently, maybe every 2 weeks to start, and then we can see what our timeline's looking like, because we have 8 months, and that's, hard and fast. I suppose we can go back to council and say we need a little bit more time, but I would like to see us stick to that timeline if we can. What are your thoughts about that?
I think this has been a very interesting conversation, I think, for all of the staff that are on this call. And I think there are some staff who are not on this call that need to be brought into the conversation, and we'll make sure that happens. I think
Anne-Marie and Barb.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we'd like to do is take this conversation away and, build out a structure over the 8 months and bring that back to you all. And I think we could turn that around within a couple of weeks with an idea of the various groups that we could talk to, the sources of information, that what we've heard, you'd like to see brought forward to be included as a basis for understanding and then developing recommendations. So if we can do that, I think that would be really beneficial, because as you say, I think both social services and housing need to be part of this conversation as well. And what their understanding is, there are a lot of changes happening in both of those worlds. And I think that it would be helpful for the committee to have a grasp of where we see some of that going.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Okay, I'm very sorry, at least from my end, I heard about one other. Can people hear me okay? Just nod if you can. If you can't, no. I'm guessing that you folks can't hear me very well, right?
You're breaking up.
Can you folks hear me now? Yeah, I apologize. I'm in Memorial Park and I probably don't have the best signal.
Maybe just take your video off for a minute.
I need to go out and then back in again, and hopefully not.
Selwyn, just take your video off for a minute. Just go audio for a second, see if that helps.
To the rest of the committee, were you able to hear what I was saying? Is it only Selwyn that missed it? Okay.
Yeah.
Here. Is that helping at all?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, that's better.
Yep.
Is that better?
Yes.
No, it is? Okay.
Yes,
so
it
Kim,
is.
I'm very sorry. I didn't hear what
I said?
I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to repeat it all because I heard about every fifth word.
Right. So bottom line, we'll engage with some other staff who aren't on the call, and we will put together a plan to use these 8 months and bring our best ideas as far as where sources of information are and people that we believe would be beneficial for the committee members to hear from. We'll bring that back to a meeting that we'll set up in 2 weeks. Is everybody who's on the committee willing, at least at the outset, to come meet again in a couple of weeks? Can we meet that frequently at the beginning? Is that okay? Okay.
Yep, I'm fine with that.
Good, thank you.
We just may have to do a doodle just to make sure we get everybody fit into that.
So again,
He's missing it. I'll take my
sorry,
video.
folks. Not a great idea for chair to be in a park. But I think that's a good idea. Kim, I wonder if you can hear me. I wonder at the same time that you're developing this plan and meeting again in 2 weeks, could we start by at least reaching out to 2 police chiefs?
Absolutely.
Are people
We'll
hearing me?
do that right away.
No. I'm going to log out and log back in, okay? Councilor Leary, do you want to maybe take over while I try to fix this problem?
Sure. So Kim, I think
Can you
what he
folks hear
said,
me? No. If Councilor Leary will take over, if anyone can hear me, Councilor Leary take over. I'm going to log out and try to get back in.
Okay.
okay, Kim, can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Okay. I think what he was asking for was in the meeting in 2 weeks is to see if we could get the 2 police chiefs involved.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, is there any way we can get information on the meth clinic in Owen Sound too?
Yes.
I really don't have, I think there's speculation around town that it does us a lot more harm than good. And I really don't know enough about it.
Right.
How many people are actually sent here just for the clinic and that sort of thing. And I wouldn't mind having information on that too, if staff would be able to do such a thing.
Certainly. I'll make a note of that, and we'll bring that information back, or have someone come and speak to the treatment facilities, even if I could get Clark from CMHA to speak or something like that. So
Okay, was there any other comments from anyone with item number 4?
Mr. Chair, or Mr. Vice
Yep.
Chair, I should say. Something else that I would like to see, certainly, I guess that's talked about, one of the themes is how important our 2 larger centers are to the rest of Grey County and how they interact together. And I know that's part of our terms of reference. I just want to expand a little bit, but you know, how Grey County as a whole supports those urban centers, whether it's for jobs, whether it's for commerce, business, and all that, but also how it's tied together. And I think that's very important as we go through here moving forward, is we move forward in a positive sense that there's an understanding that in order for Grey County to grow, I think it's very important when we come back to the rest of County Council, how important it is that we all work together moving forward. And that's, you know, how we support each other. And also, and we have the smaller urban areas too, but also it's all tied together with transportation. Social is, you know, the larger centers have the bigger, they offer, whether it's services from provincial and federal government, whether it's service from the County of Grey, as we know at our county building itself with satellites. I think it just, as we go through here, just a good understanding that gets translated back to our rest of our county. And I know that's part of our mandate, but also how we can communicate that also to the public. And as we move forward, whether it's with, again, with transportation, or we're building as far as, you know, our future official plan, or how we're going to work with our new official plan and how that all ties together. And there's an understanding with that, because it's also with regards to tourism and you know, just economic development that's happening across the county, and just how it all ties together. And you know we go grocery shopping, we go to get repairs or whatever, or we go out for dinner. There's so much interaction that happens throughout the County of Grey, and I think it's so important that we really showcase that, and how we, you know, that allows us to have a better understanding moving forward. So
Thanks, Warden McQueen. So Kim, with those comments, I just wonder if we should just leave this wide open with you in terms of prioritizing what we're going to talk about in the next meeting. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it's not police right away, like what Buck had mentioned, but you know, if you want to talk about other things, so maybe there should be some kind of prioritization done before we get.
As staff, we'll work on a plan that kind of allows you to, you know, build up from a foundation and get more specifics. I mean, Savannah's on this call. There's a discussion to be had about what it means to be a regional center from a site selection perspective. If we are thinking that we are missing any particular services or, you know, commercial, retail, whatever, I think it's important for the committee to understand how those decisions get made. We're also in a really interesting time right now. And what do we know about the health of our business community? Hanover and Owen Sound both have pretty substantial downtowns that in some ways are quite stressed. What do we know about that? What do we need to be looking out for? And, you know, going forward, what do we need to be, you know, planning for as far as other challenges or new opportunities as that whole landscape changes?
Okay. Buck, you look like you're back there. Do you want to just take over then?
Yeah, sure. I'm back. Just following up on Warden McQueen's comments. I think that if we envelope those themes within what we started off with, which was looking at the official plan, there is a role for agriculture. There's a role for our, you know, Hanover and Owen Sounds in that official plan. And so, yes, it's very much the mission of this task force to address those 2 primary settlement areas in the context of how does it contribute to the betterment of Grey County. So we definitely want to keep that in mind, and that will be, I think, enveloped in all of the discussions. It's about not just about Hanover and Owen Sound, but how does Hanover and Owen Sound contribute to the betterment of Grey County as a whole? That, I think, is what we're trying to achieve here, right?
And just one other thing.
So, and my comment on the policing, my suggestion was merely that we develop this agenda over the next 2 weeks, but perhaps at the same time, we could give a heads up to our 2 police chiefs. Sorry, I'm seeing your faces. Have I lost connection again? It looks like yes. Oh dear. Councilor Leary, it looks like you're going to be back on again. If people can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Better without the video.
Yeah.
I think you can try again, Owen.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
that's
video
good.
is off. So the last thing I wanted to say, and I'll be quiet, is at the same time that we're developing this agenda over the next couple of weeks, perhaps we can give a heads up to our 2 police chiefs that we will be wanting some sort of a presentation from them.
Yes.
Randy, you're nodding, so I'm gathering you heard me.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And Mr. Chair, just to expand on one other part, I'm thinking about also the workforce and what's her name? Gamma. I'm trying to think of her
Gemma?
name. Yes, could maybe be part of that discussion. So say, for example, the 2 larger urban centers are looking at a business coming to town, but you also, in order to entice a business, you got to look at a workforce and where's that workforce coming from? And so that workforce comes from a bigger catchment area, which includes part of Grey County. And again, those are the intricacies. I think it's very important as we come out of here that we develop those understandings. So then from our economic development side, whether it's Steve or a collaboration from our lower tier economic development, we again can work as a team to sort of put together some, maybe through the federal government for funding, provincial government for funding, and also for businesses that are looking to relocate. Because I think a real key thing moving forward is the millennial cohort that's looking, and with the COVID-19, things are changing, things are moving around. People are, and so key to that is broadband. And certainly broadband in your urban areas are probably more fiber related, I would think. I know Owen Sound probably has fiber, and I'm pretty sure Hanover has fiber too. So those are important things as far as economic growth, in the sense of, be able to trigger all those great things. So I think we're going to have lots of fun here talking about all this great stuff and how we're going to package this all up, along with dealing with the social part that we need to deal with and other items that are listed. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Are you there, Buck?
Chair, if I could.
Okay.
We certainly
ahead.
talked a lot about
Go ahead, Councilor O'Leary.
He's got the wrong Brian. Anyway, we've talked a lot about concerns and challenges, how the 2 communities relate to the rest of the county. But one of the objectives, is the opportunities as well, about how and that, I think this relates to what the warden was talking about as well, the interaction between the large urban centers in the county and the rest of the county, and what the opportunities are to help uplift the communities as well. And so I don't want to lose that piece of the objectives as well.
Agreed.
Noted.
And sorry, I got the wrong Brian.
Well, that's okay. I'm the better looking, taller one, but you go ahead.
Well, everybody's taller to me, so.
So now we're talking about challenges, right? I mean, come on.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to the next item?
Yeah.
Item number 5.
Yeah.
Kim, if you can hear me, I'll let you take over there.
Okay, thanks, everyone. So it was brought to my attention that there might be a question of overlap between the work of this task force and the work that Hanover is undertaking independently with regard to their inventory of serviced land suitable for development. Is everybody aware of that project? So Hanover has retained a planning firm to assist them in discussions with their neighboring municipalities specific to their inventory of serviced industrial or commercial property and residential. Having just discussed the purpose of this task force, and I think I heard broad agreement that what we're really looking at is the socioeconomic conditions of our two primary settlement areas and wanting to make recommendations to either improve those or take advantage of future opportunities. I think that Hanover's project is running on a separate track, and looking at land supply from Hanover's perspective is not something that this group is going to be delving into, at least not at this stage. So maybe in the future, the two projects might inform each other, but I didn't feel like one took precedence over the other or needed to be finished before another one could start. And so I hope that everybody around the table feels the same way, that what Hanover's doing and looking at land supply is quite different than what we've talked about here this morning, and that there aren't concerns that you would want me to either take back through to Hanover or feel that there's something that we need to be conscious of as we think of the work that we want to do at this table. I think.
So any
Go ahead.
comments from anyone about that? Warden McQueen.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for those comments, Kim.
Warden McQueen, if you can hear me, you're on.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair? Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. So yeah, I would agree with those comments from Madam CEO. I know that I think, Randy, you are looking at bringing a report back at some time, right? And maybe that would be the time that would be spoken to, or whatever at that time. I don't know. Randy, do you have a comment to that?
Yeah. Task force members may recall that a staff report was brought forward to committee of the whole in March of this year, right before the pandemic hit, actually. And we know that other settlement areas in Grey County are facing similar challenges to Hanover, or will be facing them in the future. In that settlement areas are adjacent to municipal boundaries, and additional lands may need to be designated in order to accommodate for the future growth of those settlement areas. Based on that, county staff presented a report to council seeking direction on exploring these matters further, to research what other municipalities have done in situations like this, and to see if there are what we call win-win solutions for dealing with these challenges. Because as we noted previously, if our settlement areas are not able to grow and thrive, then nobody wins. We have started that research, and we think this information will be helpful when we get further into what options may exist to address not only Hanover's challenges, but other settlement areas in Grey County as well. And as the warden indicated, we will be bringing back a report in the future to committee of the whole based on this research. So although, as Kim indicated, Hanover is working on this matter because they've recognized that these things take time, and it doesn't happen overnight in terms of trying to resolve some of these challenges. And that's why we as county staff, we brought forward that report to recognize that it's not only Hanover that's potentially facing these challenges, maybe other settlement areas as well. And we've got a number throughout the county that will be facing these similar challenges. So we wanted to try to get ahead of it a little bit, and try to look at what options may be available that other municipalities have explored in order to try to address some of those challenges. So that's a report that will be brought forward to committee of the whole in the future for sure.
Thank you, Randy. Warden McQueen, anything else?
No, that's fine. I think that's probably the time that could expand, and that comes back to the whole committee of the whole of all of council too, and that. So, well, that's good. So if we agree that that goes from there, then that would be fine. I would think, is what the CAO has said.
Yes, and at the beginning of this, I'm sorry, Warden McQueen. At the beginning of this meeting, I talked about the terms of reference, referencing things like trend analysis and forecasting. Sorry, I can see from your faces that you can't hear me very well, right? Not if you can't hear me very well, or not if you can hear me. Okay, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let Councillor O'Leary wrap up the meeting, okay? If anybody can hear me, Councillor O'Leary, just tell him to take over and finish up the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Buck. So, so any other discussion on item number 5, then we move on to 6? Kim, are you talking, or would you like to speak on that?
That's fine. And thank you for that confirmation. We'll move forward on the basis that we've discussed for item 5. And then for item 6 about processes or opportunities for information gathering, I think we've covered that item in our earlier discussion. And so I thank you all for your contribution to that. And unless there's anybody have any last thoughts while we're on this call about particular items that you wanted us to make sure we investigate. If any come to mind, please just send a quick note to any of us as staff and we'll include that. But we'll work on the outline as we've discussed and bring that back to the meeting in 2 weeks.
Just one comment, Mr. Chair, if I might, or Vice Chair. I'm looking at the objectives, and the first is to assess the available social and economic data. You mentioned Gemma earlier, Kim. I'm wondering if some of her work would give us some idea of where the trend lines are going with some of these issues. And as Randy mentioned earlier, there are other smaller urban areas that are, you know, encountering the same pressures. I'm hoping that whatever work we come up with or solution or ideas would inform the smaller urban centers as well, that the how they could attack those challenges.
Right. Thanks. Savannah, do you want to make a couple comments here?
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to go back through some of our work with the Economic Development Working Group that we have with all of your members, as well as our Economic Development and Planning Advisory Committee, because we work very closely with Gemma, and I think she's going to be a key source for some of this, but also the YMCA, because they are really on the ground with our employers and they know where those struggles are. So I'm going to talk to them, and then in-house between Brad, Noble, and Planning and Social Services, and then those departments on their own, we have a wealth of data that we can pull for this from Census, from Environics. We used to have a really good tool called Analyst. It doesn't exist anymore, but we do have that data from last year, and we can certainly ground truth it. So we'll have those conversations and bring them back in a couple of weeks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Savannah.
If I might, Chair O'Leary, just to add to that, we also will have on the trends in forecasting, which I think is where Councillor Hicks was pointing at in terms of the forecasting and the trends analysis. We will also have the growth management study update numbers later this year. So we are in the RFP process for that right now. The submission deadline is this week, and we'll be reviewing those and then hiring consultant this month. So we will have some additional information that'll be beyond Hanover and Owen Sound. That'll be for the entire county. So that will help hopefully inform, as what Councillor Milne indicated, some of that data as well. I think we've already identified there's some other task force that are underway where we are collecting data and information which will help inform some of the themes that I think have been identified with this task force, things like housing and climate change. So we're already collecting some of that data and information for the entire county, but we can maybe drill in further, as Savannah indicated, to having Brad Noble's expertise to dig into some of this data further from a Hanover Owen Sound perspective for this task force. So yeah, I think there's not an end to limits of data that we can tap into. And I think Councillor Hicks indicated earlier on, there's a lot of existing data sources that we'll be able to source out and explore further.
Thanks, Randy. Is there any other business, any other comments from anyone?
Just one comment, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm always trying to think ahead on the bigger picture. And I know I had some conversations with a number of you during my one-on-one with you earlier on this year before COVID-19 really hit. And I think talking with you, Vice Chair, was about hotel accommodations in Owen Sound. And I understand there's going to be a hotel built, or there's in the process of building a hotel. And so that, about, very much our Grey County is tourism related, and we have seen a big influx of staycations in Ontario, and you're going to see that probably in people relocating and stuff. But part of that tourism side is how do we promote what Owen Sound and maybe Hanover is looking at in the sense of accommodation, but also on the tourism of all those activities that are outside of those larger urban areas. Like I'll take an example of the Opera House in Meaford, where they have a lot of, I guess you call it the cultural type events. And there's like, we in Grey Highlands have the Old Baldy and there's so many different attractions throughout Grey County. And that may be something, that may be the icing on the cake, but I think it's so important. Again, it goes back to the economic part, but also on that tourism side, how we're also connected. And, Grey Roots is a perfect example of our history and our culture of Grey County, but how it ties to so much in Owen Sound and Hanover as well. So it's just a softer side, or, of what we are doing in Grey County. But I think it's so important to grow, and I think an example is Owen Sound with regards to your hotel accommodations, what drives that and what brings people into our area. And, you bring people in our area and sometimes they want to stay too, right? So just some high level thoughts as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. Okay, just to wrap things up here, then Kim, I think it's okay just to leave it with you and staff then to come up with priorities and agendas for the next meeting. And number 8 is meeting dates. So I'm assuming that Heather would be able to poll the committee and come up with the date for the next meeting.
Yeah, between Tara and I, we will find a suitable meeting date in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, that's good. That closes things out. Thanks very much, everyone. Buck, if you can hear me, enjoy your camping, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Thanks,
Meeting
everyone.
adjourned. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.
I know.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'll move.
Counselor Millen?
Yeah.
Second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
The vice chair's new. We'll
Oh,
let
I'm
him
muted.
slide on
Sorry.
that one.
All in favor? All in favor?
All good.
That's carried. Good night.
Thank you.